Podcasting 101 with me, your host, Rachel. This podcast is for female business owners and solopreneurs that are looking to start a podcast that adds to your own already awesome offering. I'll give you helpful advice that you can take away and use in your podcasting journey. I hope to answer those tricky questions that just keep you from starting. Once a month, I'll be joined by other female podcasters. They'll share their journey with you and offer tips and advice they discovered along the way. Let's get started. Hi, and welcome to this week's episode. Today, I'm talking about Podfade. Now, you may or may not have heard of this new term that is coined when you basically fade out from your podcast. You drop off the face of the earth with your podcast. Why does it happen? Well, there are a few different reasons why you might stop doing your podcast. You get super busy in your business and you simply just don't have time, and there's factors of overwhelm there. You have too much on your plate and you just don't have time to record or to find your guests or things like that. You might have a personal event going on in your life that makes it really difficult to find time to record your podcast, to invest that time in whatever you need to do. Or you might have fallen out of love with it. Let's face it, sometimes things don't work out exactly how we planned. Maybe it's not going the way you want it to do and you're just kind of ignoring it. Not to worry, there are a few things that you can do to prevent podfade. Number one, make the podcast work for you. The podcast should fit in with what you have going on in your business and in your life. So this is one thing that I recommend that people think about, like prior to starting your podcast, is, you know, being realistic with your time. Have you got the time and the energy to fit the podcast in? Have you got time to record? Have you got time to schedule? All those kind of things. And is it now? I mean, it's okay to realize actually this is a lot of work, and am I putting too much pressure on myself? Let me give you an example. So when I started my first podcast, the Virtually Inspiring podcast, I started out weekly. I'd been organised, I'd sorted out some guests, and I'd kind of got a lot of interviews in the bank. But as time had gone on, I had started picking up work, because this is when I started right at the beginning of my business, when I didn't have very many clients or not a lot of work on. So I quickly realised after a couple of months, I'd got through my bank of interviews. I had more work on. I didn't have time to schedule interviews. And then I realised, why am I putting this pressure on myself? Yes, I made a commitment to do my podcast and I had decided on weekly. But then I decided to change it to monthly because this suited me better at that point that I was in with my business. So is that something that you can think about? Have you committed to a weekly podcast and it's too much doing the weekly podcast? So make it monthly. Just let your audience know when they can expect your next episodes. Do a little video. Just everybody will understand. You don't have to, rigidly stick to something if it's not working for you and your business. Another option is looking at what you can do to streamline the process for your podcast. Can you outsource any of it? Some of it? All of it? You could outsource the social media and get a VA to do the repurposing of your podcast to make it into, so if you're repurposing your podcast yourself and you're making audiograms, social captions, blogs, all those types of things from your podcast, maybe you can outsource that to somebody else. Maybe it's the editing that you find you have the trouble with, or guest management, scheduling in all your guests, researching your guests. You can outsource some or all of those things. You don't have to put that pressure on yourself to do it all yourself. The next big thing is planning. Planning will definitely help you with Podfade. If you have the planning in place, maybe you haven't done the planning to begin with, and that's okay. Like this podcast, I planned out 12 months in advance. I knew I wanted to commit to 12 months of podcasting. I mapped out all my episode ideas and where my guests were going to go. Now, I've changed a couple of the episodes to fit in with what I want to put out there now. I've thought of something new. That's absolutely fine. But I had that idea, the dates when I wanted them to go out. And then I kind of am about 4 weeks ahead with my podcast. So I will schedule the time in your diary, which I think is a really important thing to do. You have to, like, I physically plan out my diary. I love colour coding. It's my version of online Post-its. And I have that time in my diary. It does move around sometimes, and sometimes it does get pushed because of life, and that is okay. But I think if you have a really good idea of how much time you need to save for doing show notes, for editing, for guest research, all those types of things, if you have it, whether it's you block a day out, whether you block a couple of hours every couple of weeks out to do that, I think that, well, I know that this is what keeps me on track. I have them as a recurring appointment so that I know, right, I need to start planning the depth of the episodes. I need to do all the social media graphics. I need to get in touch with my guests, or I need to do some guest research now. It's really, really helpful to stop you kind of losing interest or just finding everything too much. If you outsource all of these things to a podcast manager like myself, then make sure you have a plan with your manager to know how clear it is, like who's doing what for what day. So you may be outsourcing everything, but for all the episodes to go out on time, you need to get the content to your podcast manager or your producer. So if that is what you're struggling with, again, blocking out the time in your diary, making it clear when you have to get that information over so that your podcast manager can work all their magic and make everything happen for you. There are a couple of tools that you can use for this. I would recommend you use a project management tool. There are, as you probably already know, there are a lot of project management tools out there. Trello, Asana, ClickUp, Monday.com, whichever tool works best for you. Even if it's, you've got a planner on a paper and then you're just emailing the dates, or you put a little note in your diary, this is when this is happening. These kind of tools are there to help you. For example, I have a Trello board with one of my clients. I have cards of all the different episodes, and within that there are tasks that we can tick off when things are done. So they can see when I've edited, when I need certain things like thumbnails or show notes. Those can really help keep you on track. And then you can set date reminders on those as well, so that you don't miss anything. Hopefully, these tips will help you avoid Podfade. One last little thing that's important is to just let your audience know what's going on. I mean, we're all human. People get it if you're busy. I think if you just communicate to your audience that you're having a hiatus perhaps, or you're changing your frequency of your episodes, just let them know, and instead of just kind of disappearing. Let me give you an example of this. So this podcast, I'm taking a bit of a break over the summer. I was trying to fit everything in, creating new episodes before my holiday, and I literally sat down the other day and thought, I just can't do this. I'm not going to be able to fit it in with all my other client work that I need to do. So I've decided to, for the 6 weeks of the kids' school holidays, because I've got kids and I'm planning holidays and things. So I'm going to repost some of my favourite episodes and some of the guest insight episodes that are really well worth listening to again. So that is what I've decided to do over the summer, and then come back in September with an amazing guest, which is Michelle Donayo, and some new fresh episodes and content for you all. Here's me letting you know. I'll also be sharing this on social media as well, so you can find out when you can get new episodes. Next week, I have the final guest before the summer break, and that is Sidel Stewart. She was a fantastic guest. We had a really great chat, and she gave me a lot to think about for guest user experience. And this is something that I'm taking on board for myself. I hope you enjoyed the episode today and you've got something out of it. As ever, if you have any questions, please let me know. I would love to hear from you. Take care. Bye. Thanks so much for listening. If you've enjoyed today's episode, please like, share and subscribe. Your support means so much to me. If there's a question or topic you'd like covering, then I'd love to hear from you. Find the podcast on Instagram @RachelBotfield and drop me a DM. Till next time, bye.